And fortuitously for us, the most active team at the deadline so far is the team that we followed the closest, the Toronto Maple Leafs, making 3 trades over the last 72 hours. And we will kick it off in chronological order, going back to Friday evening when the Toronto Maple Leafs acquire Reilly Nash from the Columbus Blue Jackets. And this is a trade where some people scratching their heads about trading for a guy who's currently on long-term injured reserve, LTIR. But this is a trade that allowed the Leafs to open up some cap space. So they get him, put him on LTIR. It just extends the margin that they can go above the cap at the deadline. At its core, that is like the simplest explanation of LTIR. Otherwise, very difficult to figure out the cap shenaniganery. But essentially just means that they have a little bit more cap space to make more moves at the trade deadline. Additionally, with Reilly Nash, the Leafs send back a conditional 7th-round pick that becomes a 6th-round pick if he plays 25% of their playoff games. So definitely a possibility you could see him as a 3rd or 4th line center come playoff time. He's a big dude. He's not fun to play against. So I think the Leafs getting a guy like that, just the possibility, but more so the trade, the cap space is more important for essentially nothing. Solid pickup, just ways to maneuver yourself. I don't know if you have anything else to say about this one.
Not a ton, just replenishing some of that depth we lost to the Canucks and Boyd and VC off waivers. I mean, I kind of did a double take at first because I was thinking depth forwards, like we already have way too many depth forwards, but looked into the cap stuff and yeah, you never know come injuries down the playoffs. There might be some space for this guy in the bottom 6. Certainly nice to have someone with some NHL experience ready to plug that hole, but on to bigger and better things from Columbus.
Yes. I guess we'll do Leafs trades first, shall we? So yesterday, 2 moves in the span of 6 hours, I would say. And the last one happening right before I went to sleep. But the Leafs making a big splash and acquiring left winger Nick Foligno and another winger, Stefan Noisen, from the San Jose Sharks, but Foligno from the Blue Jackets for a 1st-round pick and a 4th-round pick to Columbus and a 4th-round pick to San Jose. A massive move. San Jose involved in the deal because Columbus retained 50% of Nick's salary, and then San Jose retained another 50% of that. So the Leafs are only paying Nick Foligno 25% of his salary. A 4th goes to the Sharks for their troubles because, as we'll see from a lot of these moves, cap space is like the most important part of this trade deadline because not a lot of teams have the money to afford their teams. They don't want to make moves where you're paying the full salary of guys unless they're really getting something back. And that played a huge factor in this. But we'll talk about what the Leafs get. Nick Foligno and Stefan Noesen, who probably won't crack the lineup, even though he is an NHL caliber player. Just talking about depth forwards, we have plenty. Always nice if a guy gets injured, we have someone we can plug in. But the big piece, Nick Foligno, really exciting. Max, I'll let you kick things off on Nick Foligno.
Yeah, I mean, this lineup we've seen over the season, Sheldon Keefe has been happy to throw into a blender when things aren't going well, when things are going well, really any day that ends in Y, and Keefe mixing stuff up. So I have no idea where Foligno is going to fit in this lineup. You can really see him playing on any line, and he's the kind of guy you can really see excelling on any line, you can never really have enough like grit, goal scoring, toughness, and that's essentially what Nick Foligno brings with veteran leadership. And these are the kind of moves you see teams making to try and make that playoff run. So we paid a fair amount in a 1st-round pick, but this pretty straightforward sink or swim. I think if we make it to the 2nd, 3rd round, it pays off in reducing the value of that pick and a huge step forward for this franchise.
Yeah. If anyone is complaining about the price, first of all, this is the least scouted draft ever in the history of the NHL, it feels like, due to COVID and due to half the guys in like the OHL not even playing. Just a weird Magic Beans type year is the phrase that I've seen going around. It's going to be a late 1st-round pick. And if you are concerned about the Leafs giving up draft picks at a time where they have the chance to come out of this division, like the best chance in a really long time to be in the final four of the Stanley Cup playoffs, then you have bigger issues. Because this is an all-in, let's win now move. And no one will ever care about this pick if the Leafs make it to the third round of the playoffs. Like the Tampa Bay Lightning way overpaid for Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman last year at the deadline, and they won the Stanley Cup, and no one cares now, right? The price doesn't matter to me. They're all in. These picks mean nothing. We get tangible guys. We actually don't lose any prospects either, which is huge because these are guys that we have evaluated and we know their uh, potential. So rather keep on to the prospects than picks where you don't know who you could possibly be getting in the draft. And the other thing is where he slots in the lineup. I think I see him on the second line. I think Galchenyuk played with Matthews and Marner this most recent game because they wanted to see how he fit in on that line, and it was excellent. And so that basically allows them the breathing room to say, okay, we can put Galchenyuk up on the first line, and then essentially now we're looking to put Foligno on this second line as that perfect piece who provides that grit and skill beside Tavares and Nylander, because Foligno is, you hate to play against this guy. This is a guy that the Leafs have been missing since Kadri, and he is a MFer that you do not want to go up against. He's going to deck some guys. He's going to get under your skin. A guy that just is perfect for playoff hockey. Really excited to have him because he's also that, like, Zach Hyman is, he works hard, but then you sometimes miss the finishing power. Like a lot of his goals are empty netters and perfect setups from Matthews, Marner's, or like rebounds, stuff like that. Nick Foligno is a guy who can score a little bit more on his own, which is what Tavares and Nylander, I think, need a little bit more than Matthews and Marner. I think it's just a perfect spot for him. They finally have figured out that left winger because they've had to rotate through Hyman, Simmons, Galchenyuk. So if he can slot in there, that's huge. And then you have Zach Hyman on the third line, which is every team's nightmare. And so, yeah, I love this move for the potential of him being an absolute pain in the ass to play against. He's another leader in the locker room. That's going to be like the fourth captain now that the Leafs have added to their like depth with Spezza, Thornton, and I guess Tavares is a former captain. So just a lot of leadership. And then everything that you've heard about this guy, Nick Foligno, is just he's the nicest guy. And people love playing with him. And my girlfriend grew up in Ottawa. Nick Foligno's wife was a school teacher at her school. Everyone loved their family. I'm sure everyone has kind of a story of how they know the Folignos, but they're excellent, and really excited to have them a part of this Leafs run. And hopefully he can have some big moments. And I think he has it in him too, because we just saw last year playing against Columbus in that 5-game series. Hate playing against him, but you love it when he's on your team. And so welcome aboard, Nick. Really, really exciting stuff.
Yeah, I think you said it all there. Other than I'm really not certain he'll be a mainstay on that second line at all. I mean, I think Kerfoot and Galchenyuk have been the two most successful players that Keith has slotted alongside Tavares and Nylander. And I kind of see Foligno as a later stage evolution of those two players, like what they might turn into when they get into his age. So maybe there's something there. But I can see him dropping down to play with like Engvall, Mikheyev. I can see Keith saying, fuck it, trying him on the first line. I really have no idea where he's going to be. I guess what you're saying about Magic Beans on that draft pick I feel like it reduces the value of the early picks, like the top 5,
Mm-hmm.
but it almost raises the value of the late picks. Just, I feel like there's a slightly higher chance of getting lucky on those Magic Beans. So I'm not one, again, you're right. If we go deep, even if Foligno doesn't make an impact, I don't really care. But I'm a little less certain than you that this is like a guaranteed winner trade. I am going to have an eye on what he brings to this team, especially come playoffs. The regular season you can wash if he does nothing, but come playoffs, And that's, I guess, there were, I mean, we had questions at all three positions. We were wondering about that top six forward, which Foligno's certainly going to get a chance to fill.
Yeah.
We're wondering about that goaltender depth, which has been addressed. So it seems like for now, at least, the defense is the only part that's been left alone, as the Leafs have acquired David Rittich from Calgary for a 2022 third round pick.
And again, seems like a little bit of an overpay, but at this deadline, it's a big buyer's market, and lots of teams looking to move off guys, and lots of teams looking at the same guys. The thing that I forgot to mention about Foligno is that apparently the other teams in on him were Colorado, Las Vegas, and Washington. And when you have three other really smart teams like that in on a guy, you know you're probably looking at a pretty decent player. Um, but yeah, the David Rittich trade, a guy who stonewalled the Leafs in the past. Now we're hoping he'll be a stonewall for us. Big save, Dave. Great depth. Again, feels a little bit like an overpay, but what I've been reading is that there is potential there that you could possibly re-sign this guy, because if Freddie is gone after this year, then a Campbell Riddick tandem isn't the worst to kind of fall back on. It's also much lower against your salary cap, which is huge for the Leafs. So a guy that you bring in, again, another guy who all I've heard is incredible things. Everyone loves this guy. And he's fantastic. So just, it also seemed like Kyle Dubas was looking for some character guys to add to the locker room. Everyone loves Big Save Dave, and he comes in. He'll be that third goalie, maybe second if Freddie, the injury is worse than we predict, which also is a big part of this. But excited just to have more goaltending depth. This is the best goaltending depth the Leafs have had in forever. So yeah, just happy to have another solid guy in the back end.
Yeah, it comes around. Anderson also being added to long-term injured reserve. I'm not sure quite the protocol on that, like how long he has to be on their minimum to make that happen. But the way Campbell's season's gone, you can't help but worry. And especially when you go all in on a guy like Foligno, you give up a first, then to have like a move like that ruined because Campbell gets injured and you're stuck running Hutchinson in that would
Yeah.
be such a disaster. So you've got to have some insurance for the season once you go all in. And that's what David Riddick is. He was the
Yeah.
subject of my nightmares for a long 119 minutes in that stretch. So hopefully he can give us some of that. And I can breathe a little easier knowing he's right now probably the number two guy behind Campbell ahead of Hutch. I did also hear, I think Keith say like Anderson will be back before the playoffs. So
Yeah. They will have to give him some run because he is their number one guy since the last couple of years. And so you have to know what you have going into the playoffs. He has to get some sort of run. Yeah, it's not a bad problem to have that you now have three goalies who you could generally throw in there and feel decent about.
I don't know. They're a fragile bunch.
Yes, indeed. The last thing I guess about these trades for the Leafs is with the LTIR space created and the cap shenaniganery with some of the trades, retaining salary, the Leafs still have, it looks like 2.1 million in cap space freed up from what I've heard. And so if you get a team to retain and you send back a prospect, the cabinet of picks is a little bit lighter than before, but I think there's still room for one more move left before the deadline. And I guess you'll know when we time travel in a bit on this pod, you'll see if the Leafs end up making that final move. But yeah, I expect one more move there. And I feel like it's got to be a depth defenseman. It's got to be that last piece we were talking about that they're missing.